Welcome to the channel. This story is a good one. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Now let's get into it. I just got home from what was supposed to be a relaxing vacation in Hilton Head, South Carolina, only to find my entire front yard, every single bush and flower completely dug up. Not trimmed, not pruned, but violently ripped out of the ground. My azaleas, my hydrangeas, even the small dogwood tree near the porch gone, just raw earth and scattered debris. It looked like a natural disaster, but there wasn't a single storm while I was away. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone trying to call my neighbor, Brenda. She's usually on top of all the neighborhood gossip, especially anything involving the HOA. Brenda didn't pick up, which was weird for her. She always answers. I left her a frantic voicemail, probably sounding unhinged, asking what the hell happened. Then I saw it, tucked under a loose brick near my mailbox, a pristine white envelope. Not my usual mail, this was thick, formal. My name and address printed in a crisp, impersonal font. My heart sank even deeper because I already knew. It had to be the HOA. I tore it open right there, standing amidst the wreckage of my garden. The letter stated in cold, legalistic terms that my landscaping was non-compliant with community standards. Non-compliant? I had the most eye-catching garden on the block in Savannah, Georgia. People complimented it all the time. It went on to say they had issued multiple warnings, none of which I ever received. And because of my failure to remedy the infraction, they had exercised their right to correct the perceived violation at my expense. My expense. They didn't just ruin my yard, they were going to bill me for it. I crumpled the letter in my fist. There was a second, smaller envelope inside the first. I didn't open it, I just couldn't, not yet. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage mixed with betrayal. This wasn't just about plants. This was an invasion. What kind of power trip do these HOA people even think they're on? This is next-level psycho. The second letter was from a landscaping company I'd never heard of, itemizing the remediation costs. It was over $5,000 for destroying my garden. It also had a line item for disposal of hazardous plant material, which was insane. My plants were perfectly healthy. They were beautiful. I just stared at the number, my mind reeling. How could they justify this? How could they get away with it? I felt sick to my stomach. I tried Brenda again, and this time she answered, her voice sounding strangely timid. I blurted out everything, the destroyed yard, the insane bill, the non-existent warnings. She just kept saying, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." But it wasn't a sorry that sounded surprised. It sounded like she knew. Like she knew the whole time. That's when I noticed a faint, fresh patch of dirt near her own prize-winning rose bushes. She never planted anything new without telling me. "Brenda, did you know about this?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. There was a long silence on the other end, just the sound of her breathing. "We all got letters," she finally whispered, about general neighborhood upgrades. Upgrades? They destroyed my garden and she called it an upgrade. My blood ran cold. She received a letter but didn't warn me, my best friend and neighbor, watching my yard get annihilated while I was hundreds of miles away enjoying the beach. "What do you mean we all got letters?" I pushed, my grip tightening on the phone. "Why didn't you say anything?" Her voice became defensive then, a little snap in it. "It wasn't my place, Mary. They said it was confidential. And besides, yours was, well, yours was a special case." A special case? What made my award-winning azaleas a special case compared to her perfectly manicured petunias? I didn't get it. "She never opened the second envelope," she said. "She just paid the first nuisance fee to make them go away." A special case? And nuisance fee? That lady is shady. She knew exactly what was going on. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the barren patch where my vibrant garden used to be. I kept rereading the HOA letter, searching for any loophole, any phrase I could use against them. Failure to remedy the infraction. But what infraction? My garden was the envy of Chatham County, Georgia. It was perfectly maintained. It hit me then, a cold wave of realization. This wasn't about compliance. This was personal. I remembered the recent HOA meeting, the one I missed because of a last-minute work trip. Mrs. Henderson, the new HOA president, had been campaigning hard on a platform of uniformity and curb appeal. She had given me a weird, tight-lipped smile when I told her I couldn't make it. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now it felt sinister. It felt like a trap. Brenda had mentioned Mrs. Henderson was particularly keen on streamlining the neighborhood's aesthetic. I also remembered a passing comment from old Mr. Abernathy, who lived 2 doors down. He'd grumbled about Mrs. Henderson's iron fist approach to beautification. He said she had already gone after Mrs. Gable next door for her gnome collection. Gnomes. It seemed ridiculous then, but now it made a terrible kind of sense. My unique organic garden with its wild but beautiful arrangements probably stuck out like a sore thumb in Mrs. Henderson's vision of sterile, uniform perfection. $5,000 for uniformity. My rage started to simmer into something colder, more focused. This wasn't just an arbitrary rule. This was an executive decision made by someone with too much power and apparently a vendetta against anything that wasn't beige and boring. I picked up the phone. I wasn't calling Brenda this time, I was calling Mr. Abernathy. He always seemed to know things, and I needed to know everything. This whole uniformity thing sounds like code for something else. I bet she just didn't like her specific style, Mr. Abernathy answered on the second ring, his voice raspy. I explained everything carefully, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. He listened patiently, quietly. When I finished, there was a long pause. Mary, he finally said, I warned you about that woman. She's got an agenda, that one. And your garden, well, it was always a bit too expressive for her taste. Expressive, that's what he called it. Not beautiful or well-kept, but expressive. What agenda? I pressed, my heart pounding. What are you talking about? He sighed. She's backed by the new developer Brightstone Properties. They're looking to enhance the community, bring in a certain caliber of resident, and that means getting rid of anything they consider an eyesore or too individualistic. Your garden, with all its different native plants and wildflowers, apparently didn't fit their vision of a modern, streamlined community. Brightstone Properties. The name rang a faint bell. I'd seen their shiny new Welcome to Lakeside Estates sign go up on the vacant lot down the road a few months ago. I hadn't connected it to the HOA at all. But now it clicked into place like a chilling puzzle piece. This wasn't just Mrs. Henderson's personal vendetta, this was a corporate takeover, masked as aesthetic improvement. My home, my garden, was collateral damage in their gentrification scheme. Mr. Abernathy continued, his voice lowering. They've been buying up properties quiet like the latest HOA rules. All designed to make certain homes less desirable, push people out. Your garden was just the first, most visible target. Think about it. Who would want to buy a house with a huge landscaping bill and no garden? It was a rhetorical question, but the answer hit me hard. No one. My property value had just plummeted. He finished with a cryptic warning. Don't sign anything, Mary, don't pay a dime, and whatever you do, don't let them in your house. They're looking for any excuse. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, a developer trying to devalue my property. This was way bigger than a few azaleas. This was about my home, my financial future, and they were just getting started. This is exactly how these big developers work. They don't care about anything but money. The next morning, I woke up with a new resolve. Anger had solidified into determination. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I spent hours online researching Brightstone Properties. They were a huge development firm known for luxury communities and aggressive expansion. They had a reputation for buying out old neighborhoods, tearing down existing homes, and putting up bland, expensive new ones. The Lakeside Estates sign suddenly looked menacing. I found articles about their tactics, exploiting zoning laws, using HOA bylaws to their advantage, even reportedly harassing residents they wanted out. It was a pattern, and I was caught right in the middle of it. One article from a small local newspaper in Missoula, Montana, detailed how Brightstone had essentially redeveloped an entire historic district, pushing out longtime residents with escalating HOA fees and property demands. It outlined tactics eerily similar to what was happening to me. I also dug into Mrs. Henderson's background. She wasn't just a concerned citizen volunteering for the HOA. She owned a real estate agency, Henderson Realty, which I discovered had recently listed several homes in our neighborhood for sale. And guess who was often listed as the buyer's agent in the sale records? Brightstone Properties. She wasn't just their ally, she was working for them. She was profiting directly from every non-compliant property she helped acquire. I printed out everything, creating a thick dossier of evidence. Emails, articles, property records. The more I read, the more outraged I became. This wasn't just about my garden, it was about my entire community in Savannah, Georgia. They were trying to systematically devalue our homes, force us out, and then swoop in to build their soulless, expensive developments. I looked out at my destroyed lawn, at the beautiful homes around me, many of them lived in by families for generations. My neighbors deserved to know the truth. They deserved to know that their HOA president was a wolf in sheep's clothing, working hand in glove with a corporate predator. I knew what I had to do. I had to rally the neighborhood. I had to fight back. But how? My mind raced, forming a plan. It wouldn't be easy, but I had to try. See, I knew she was shady. Always check the background of your HOA board members. Always. I started with a simple flyer. Nothing too aggressive, just a polite invitation to an informal neighborhood get-together at my place to discuss recent community changes. I didn't mention the HOA or Brightstone, not yet. I wanted to gauge their reactions first, see who was receptive, who was already feeling the squeeze. I printed them out on brightly colored paper, something that would stand out from the usual junk mail, and slipped them into mailboxes myself under the cover of dusk. I didn't want to tip off Mrs. Henderson. As I dropped a flyer into Brenda's mailbox, I hesitated. Should I tell her? She'd known something was up even if she hadn't given me all the details. My gut told me to be cautious. Her loyalty had been questionable, so I decided to treat her like everyone else, just another neighbor receiving an invitation. If she showed up, great. If not, I'd know where she stood. The air felt thick with suspicion. Every rustle of leaves, every passing car made me jump. I felt like I was operating behind enemy lines in my own neighborhood. The evening of the meeting arrived. I had baked cookies and brewed a big pot of coffee, trying to make the atmosphere feel casual and inviting. My stomach was a knot of nerves. What if no one showed up? What if they were too afraid? Or worse, what if some of them were already on Mrs. Henderson's side? I watched the clock, the digital numbers ticking by agonizingly slow. Finally, a knock on the door. It was Mr. Abernathy, bless his heart. He carried a plate of homemade brownies. "Thought you might need some fortification, Mary," he said, giving me a knowing look. Soon after, others started to arrive, the elderly couple from down the street, Mrs. Gable, who collected gnomes, a young couple who had just moved in a few months ago. By 7 p.m., my living room was filled with about 15 neighbors. Brenda wasn't among them. This is how community organizing starts. Small steps, but it can make a huge difference. I cleared my throat, the murmuring dying down. Everyone looked at me, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "As you know, there have been some unusual changes in our neighborhood lately." I paused, letting my gaze sweep over their faces. My front yard was completely dug up while I was on vacation. The HOA claims it was non-compliant, and they billed me over $5,000 for it. A ripple of gasps went through the room. Mrs. Gable clutched her chest. The young couple exchanged wide-eyed glances. "$5,000, someone whispered. "That's outrageous." I held up the crumpled letter, then the invoice. "And this is just the beginning," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I've been doing some digging, and I've found out who's really behind these changes. It's not just the HOA, it's a development company called Brightstone Properties." I explained everything, Mrs. Henderson's ties to Brightstone, their history of aggressive takeovers, their strategy of devaluing properties to force people out. I showed them the articles, the property records, the evidence I had meticulously collected. The room grew silent, a heavy, disbelieving silence. Disbelief slowly morphed into anger, faces hardened, fists clenched. Mrs. Gable was muttering about her gnomes again, but this time it was laced with venom. "So Mrs. Henderson is trying to kick us out of our own homes?" the young man asked, his voice tight with fury. "That's illegal, isn't it?" "It's certainly unethical," I replied, "and we need to find out if it's illegal. But we can't do it alone, we have to stand together." I looked at their faces, at the dawning horror and rage in their eyes. This wasn't just my fight anymore, this was our fight. But were they ready to truly fight the HOA and a big developer? I wasn't totally sure. Man, that silence must have been intense. You can just feel the anger building up in that room. The tension in the room was palpable. Mr. Abernathy spoke first, his voice low but firm. "Mary's right, they won't stop until they get what they want, and they want this whole neighborhood. They think we're just old folks and easy targets." The young woman Emily spoke up next, her voice surprisingly strong. "My husband David and I just bought our first home here. We put everything into it. We're not letting some developer take it from us." Others chimed in, sharing their own smaller grievances. Mysterious new maintenance fees on their HOA statements, oddly specific new rules about fences or paint colors, veiled threats about property values if they didn't comply. It was a pattern, just as I had suspected. They had been chipping away at everyone, slowly, invisibly, until I exposed the whole rotten scheme. They hadn't realized how connected it all was. "So what do we do?" someone asked, a sense of helplessness creeping into their voice. "They're a big company, we're just us." I looked at them, at their worried faces. "We organize," I said, my voice steady. "We find out what our legal options are. We contact every single person in this neighborhood. We go to the media. We make so much noise they can't ignore us." My mind raced through the next steps: local news, legal aid, a community petition. We designated roles. Emily, who worked in marketing, offered to help create a website and manage social media. David, an accountant, volunteered to meticulously audit the HOA's financial records. Mr. Abernathy, with his deep roots in the community, would reach out to every longtime resident, especially those who weren't on email. We were a small army, but we were determined. The meeting broke up late, but everyone left with a sense of purpose. This wasn't just about my garden anymore. This was about their homes, their futures. I just hope they don't give up too soon. This is going to be a long, ugly fight. The very next day, the fight began in earnest. Emily and David created a private Facebook group for the neighborhood, and within hours, dozens of residents had joined. Stories poured in. People whose fences had been mysteriously deemed too tall. Others who had been hit with fines for unapproved garden ornaments. Mrs. Gable was vindicated. And one family who had been threatened with legal action over their children's brightly colored swing set. The sheer volume of complaints was overwhelming. Mr. Abernathy, true to his word, had already started knocking on doors, sharing the grim news. He reported that several older residents, too afraid or too tired to fight, had already accepted lowball cash offers from Brightstone Properties, convinced their homes were liabilities. The developer was slowly picking off the vulnerable one by one. This fueled our urgency. We had to act fast before more homes were lost. Our first big move was to schedule a special HOA board meeting demanding answers. David, armed with his accounting background, drafted a formal request, citing bylaws that required the board to address community concerns if enough residents signed a petition. We collected signatures furiously, going door to door, explaining the situation to anyone who would listen. The petition gained traction rapidly, especially after we revealed Mrs. Henderson's conflict of interest. The day the petition was delivered to the HOA office, there was a palpable shift in the neighborhood. Anonymous flyers started appearing on lampposts, praising Mrs. Henderson and condemning troublemakers trying to disrupt community harmony. The language was vague but intimidating. Then came the emails, ostensibly from the HOA, reminding residents of their covenants and restrictions and the penalties for defamation and disunity. It was clear Mrs. Henderson was feeling the pressure. But we weren't backing down. This was a battle for our community, and we were just getting started. The special meeting was set for 2 weeks later in Port Angeles, Washington, and the entire neighborhood was buzzing. This is exactly how a smear campaign works. Classic tactics. 2 weeks felt like an eternity. Anonymous threats escalated. My car tires were mysteriously deflated twice. Mrs. Gable's gnome collection was vandalized overnight, their little ceramic hats smashed to pieces. It was clearly meant to intimidate us, to make us back down, but it only made us angrier, more determined. These weren't just petty grievances anymore. This was outright harassment. Through David's meticulous digging, we uncovered something even more damning. The landscaping company that fixed my yard was newly formed, registered just 3 months prior, and its listed owner was a shell corporation. That shell corporation, in turn, was linked to a post office box in a different state that also served as the mailing address for several other businesses, all recently acquired by Brightstone Properties. It wasn't just a preferred vendor. It was a ghost company created by Brightstone themselves to launder money and inflate repair costs. My $5,000 bill wasn't just overpriced. It was part of a larger scheme to siphon funds and drive up HOA fees, making homes even less affordable. Armed with this explosive information, we walked into the special HOA meeting. The community center was packed. Every chair was filled and people stood along the walls. Mrs. Henderson sat at the head of the long table, flanked by 2 stern-faced lawyers I didn't recognize. She looked surprisingly calm, almost smug. I stepped forward, gripping a stack of documents. Mrs. Henderson, I began, my voice steady, we've uncovered some alarming information about your relationship with Brightstone Properties and the recent improvements to our neighborhood. I laid out the evidence. The shell corporations, the inflated invoices, the clear conflict of interest. As I spoke, murmurs grew louder, turning into outright shouts of fraud and resign. Mrs. Henderson's face remained a mask of polite indifference. One of the lawyers, a sharp-faced woman in a severe suit, interrupted. These are baseless accusations, Mrs. Davies. Your claims are unsubstantiated and defamatory. But I wasn't done. I pulled out the Missoula, Montana newspaper articles highlighting Brightstone's past predatory practices. The room erupted. Mrs. Henderson finally flinched, her composure cracking. She knew we had her. But what would she do next? They always have the lawyers ready. It's part of the game. They probably expected this. Before Mrs. Henderson or her lawyers could regain control of the meeting, David stepped forward, projected a spreadsheet onto the screen, and calmly broke down the HOA's finances. He showed how my landscaping bill and similar maintenance charges levied on other properties were routed through Brightstone's shell companies, inflating the costs by over 300%. He revealed that significant portions of the HOA's reserve funds meant for community improvements had been funneled into these fake contracts. The numbers spoke for themselves. It wasn't just my property they were devaluing. They were gutting the entire HOA from the inside. The room exploded. People were on their feet, yelling, demanding answers. The phrase embezzlement was thrown around. Mrs. Henderson's face went from smug to pale. Her lawyers looked less confident, whispering urgently to each other. One of them actually had to hold her back when she lunged forward, trying to yank the projector plug. It was chaos. We had them cornered. Then a voice cut through the din. It was Brenda. She stood hesitantly at the back of the room, looking nervous. I can corroborate some of this, she stammered, wringing her hands. Everyone turned to her. Mrs. Henderson told me, she said, if I didn't cooperate, they'd target my house next. She said she knew about my unpermitted patio extension. The room went silent again, but this time it was a stunned silence. Brenda, who had been so evasive, so seemingly uncooperative, was now talking. Her confession, quiet as it was, hit harder than any of David's damning spreadsheets. It painted Mrs. Henderson as not just a corrupt official, but a bully coercing neighbors with threats. Mrs. Henderson shot Brenda a look that could curdle milk, but it was too late. The dam had broken. Others started speaking up, detailing their own confidential warnings and veiled threats from the HOA president. The sense of collective betrayal was overwhelming. The meeting deteriorated quickly after that. People were calling for Mrs. Henderson's immediate resignation, demanding an investigation. Her lawyers pulled her out of the room amidst jeers and accusations. We had won this battle, but the war, I knew, was far from over. There was no way Brightstone Properties would just pack up and leave. Brenda, I knew she was a little snake, but at least she came clean. Better late than never, I guess. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind. The story broke in the local Savannah, Georgia news. HOA corruption scandal rocks quiet neighborhood, read one headline. Reporters swarmed our street, eager for interviews. We provided them with all our evidence. David's financial audit, the shell company connections, Brenda's testimony, and the countless complaints from other residents. The pressure mounted fast. Within days, the HOA board, stripped of Mrs. Henderson, suspended all non-compliance actions and froze all payments to Brightstone-linked companies. They announced an independent audit, effectively admitting something was seriously wrong. Mrs. Henderson, facing potential criminal charges and a barrage of lawsuits, resigned from both the HOA and her realty company, effective immediately. It was a huge victory, a testament to what a united community could achieve. But victory felt incomplete. Brightstone Properties, through their PR firm, issued a statement denying all wrongdoing, claiming they were victims of misinformation and defamation. They threatened legal action against anyone spreading false rumors. It was a classic corporate smokescreen, but it was also a warning. They weren't going down without a fight. And then the letter arrived. This one wasn't from the HOA, it was from a new law firm, one I didn't recognize, representing Brightstone Properties directly. It was a formal notice of intent to sue, alleging slander, interference with business contracts, and damage to their corporate reputation. It named me personally, along with David, Emily, and Mr. Abernathy as co-defendants. The financial damages they were seeking were staggering, millions of dollars. My heart sank. This was it, the real fight. They weren't just going to let us expose their scheme, they were going to try to crush us under the weight of a massive lawsuit. They were trying to scare us, to bankrupt us, to make an example out of us. I looked out at my still barren front yard. It was a stark reminder of how this all started and how much more there was to lose. We thought it was over, but it was just the beginning. They were never just going to roll over. This is exactly what I expected. They have endless money for lawyers, it's terrifying. Make sure to subscribe for more HOA stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'll see you in the next one.